Hey folks, it's T2sday 3119. Here's the goals for this time. Here are the results. It's win some, lose some. I've got a lot of stuff to show you, a lot of stuff to talk about, so it's going to take a while. So let's just dive right into it. I was cooking these little videos still right up until this morning, so I apologize in advance. They're a little bit long and a little bit rough, but let's get into it. The bigger, more immediate issue is heat. It's time to move on that. So I ended up going with this AC Infinity stuff because it seemed the most plug and play. And it was supposed to get mounted in the cabinet. The bookcase doesn't have a cabinet front, so I started making little bits on the 3D printer. We get power on the fan, it doesn't say. Temperature sensor. Switch over to tile so we can see the temperatures. Title's not supposed to be there. Didn't have time to re-render. The temperatures are awful. The speeds are awful. Let's see if anything happens here. So if I'm pulling air out the back, then I need to close off the holes in the front so that air gets forced through the made these baffles. Should actually do us for a while. You can actually see this happen on the. So I went and got a second one of these to put 3 fans on each side. I'm trying to do the unboxing correctly here. Power supply. This is a very aggravating thing. This is a USB format power supply, I believe. Yeah, a USB-A connector on it, but output 6.5 volts. Great. I love it when they do. I know why they do it, but I love it. All right, and here is. So that's what I did. All right, so they call it the S7, it's the triple, and this box is beautiful, whereas the original box had a ding here, and the plate was bent. This corner of the plate was bent back. And USB with a daisy chain. There's also a speed controller on this one in case you want to use it separate, but my plan is to plug this into the thermostat that we've got, which has 2 outlets, and we have another one of these power supplies. This is actually going to be extra, so I didn't really need to buy an extra one because we're all right. Well, we'll have an extra one, but assuming we manage to build, Lotus 4, 5, 6, 7, and we want to continue this cooling approach, which maybe we do, maybe we don't. I mean, I think it's the early returns are it's plausible. Theoretically, you're supposed to use this template to put it on your cabinet or your door. Instead, I've got these 3D printed things that I whipped up I'm using it on the other one of these. It seems to work okay. The idea is it goes up in behind here and the holes line up, and that supports it so we get the height that we want to get. That's pretty good. So that's what we've got. Get us up above Lotus 1, where we're going to use some foam core just to kind of lay it over the top of this thing. Alright, so there it is. The right side grid fan for Lotus 1 and 2. Let's go see if we can hook it up to the thermostat. Alright, so the theory is we should be able to start this up and have 6 fans running. Fans and fans. Alright. And 97.6, this one is now 800. It's already gone up. So that's encouraging. This one is now at 1,000, and this one is now at 1,000. Hooray! All right, everybody. All right, I've got 2 little fans, so maybe we'll just save that up for now. I want to get some more experience with these. I have to anchor them somehow. Maybe just a piece of foam core running all the way along the top from edge to edge, and just, you know, tape it on or something like that so that they can't fall outwards or inwards for that matter. But okay, well, most of the heavy lifting was done by getting the house cooling going for the summer, the swamp cooler. But now we've got what passes for spot cooling here as well, step by step. I made this plate to connect pieces of foam core to the end, because I got a bunch of foam core, but it's something by 20 by 30, and I need something closer to 50. So I'm going to take a couple of pieces, a couple of strips of this, and try to connect them end to end using this this little clip technology that I made on the 3D printer. I got no idea if it's really going to work. This is the test. Now, according to YouTube, the key to cutting foam core with an X-Acto is to have the blade way out there and come at it at a low angle. So we'll give it a shot. Okay. Well, I mean, it could be worse. Quite a bit worse. And yet, for my purposes, it's actually still usable. Could be better, could be worse. All right, that is it. First test of foam core cutting, not so good. Drilling, come on, Forstner bit, but all very plausible. If I had there's the yeah, it's working. Not working amazingly well, but it is working, as well as that one's actually sucking it in pretty good right there. All right. All right. So, okay. Sorry about that. The smoke test at the end, it was hard to figure out a way to actually video to get the smoke in there, but it is the case that if you get close enough to the actual tiles, a lot of times near the serial port, you can see it actually is getting sucked in. So it's something. I mean, there's lots of leaks all around. That could all, this was just a first demo, and it works okay. And I just wanted to add one thing. Well, so number one, really the bottom line was that we had to get the cooling going for the summer for the house, and that made the main difference as far as cooling off the grid, which made the difference in allowing the CPU speeds to rebound. But the fans, I think they do help, and we now have a pretty good regulation. And I guess let's see, can we do this? This is the live temperature graph using the USB temperature sensor that I got a couple of weeks ago. This detached bit over here is from before the last update. This low part down here is when the grid was turned off, and this is daily cycling in temperatures. This is when the grid got turned on to start simulations that I'll show you in a little bit. And then this was temperature cycling, and then here, I guess we could zoom in on this. Was so right there is where the swamp cooler, we got the swamp cooler started up, so it's all kicking in. And now that the regulation is actually fairly good. I think part of these things is due to the thermostat on the fans turning on and off. I increased the set point on the thermostat by 1 degree just as a test, right at this spot here, right here, and it did for a while seem like it was actually reacting and made a difference. Hard to tell for sure, but bottom line, all now 57 tiles are running at 1 gigahertz, which is as good as they can do. So what I wanted to talk about in the bigger picture of this is the 4 givens of indefinite scalability. And this goes back to the original paper talking about indefinite scalability. The whole idea of doing an indefinitely scalable computer architecture, well, the question is, what do you get to work with? What are you allowed to assume you've got? And what you're allowed to assume is the 4 givens of indefinite scalability: power, cooling, real estate, and money to buy tiles. And that kind of goes without saying, but it's actually important. And as indefinite scalability is slowly getting traction out in the world. I hear it echoing a little bit more from places from time to time. But as it gets from being ignored to being laughed at and then fought, the four givens become more important because it actually makes a difference. So the fact that I'm worrying about heat here is, officially speaking, not the fault of the indefinitely scalable architecture. You know, on the one hand, saying, you can assume power and cooling, you can assume the power and cooling you need. That sounds like, an invitation to climate destruction, and, to some degree, I will take that hit that, we would like to have our indefinitely scalable machinery be run very cool and be power efficient and so on and so forth. But in order to get enough room to do research, we say we're going to put that off the table as a requirement and instead just turn it into a desirable feature, a quality rather than a requirement. And so we'll compare data sheets. How much power and cooling does this particular approach to indefinite scalability take versus that one? Same thing for how big they are, how much real estate they need, and how much they cost. Okay, so that's just a reminder that definite scalability is built on assuming those four givens, and those are an IOU. That they all have to be paid off in order to get a completely embodied system, as we just saw in dealing with heat on the T2 grid. Okay. So that's the development story. The research story has two angles. There's once again the new engine that is supposed to be more robust and flexible and so forth. Again, I did not actually work on it. I'm going to put it off the table for now, and that means we're going to continue to live with the existing code base, which has these explicit known robustness failures. In particular, once a tile is taking part in a computation and it has any interactions other than just all empty spots, all empty sites with its intertile connectors, you cannot shut that tile down without causing failures on the neighboring tiles, and you get these crash storms and so forth that happen. That is all going to have to be revisited, but at the moment I am more attracted, more drawn to wanting to explore higher up, and that's the other direction that I did go in this last 2 weeks. It was also about having a little bit of fun. Ringo off the plate, the ring oscillator that I've talked about a lot, that was sort of, kind of a key innovation of last year as far as I was concerned. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So Ringo.ulam is a particular set of code to do this ring oscillator thing. The general idea is GDRO, the Generalized Distributed Ring Oscillator. And the question is, or a question is how general is the Generalized Distributed Ring Oscillator? And the stuff that we did last year was all pretty much built on top of the plates, the L1 plates and the L2 plates. And it did show a certain amount of generality in the sense that the same thing that did the L1 plate, I don't know exactly how that actually got to be half green and half blue. But it's all rigid within a plate. And if this generalized idea really is more general, can we take it off the plate? And that's what I went after this week, this time. And fundamentally, the way that the GDRO looks at the universe, it doesn't need 2D plate. All it needs is a notion of upstream and downstream, and derivative from that if there's no upstream, then you're the root, and if there's no downstream, then you're the tail. And that's it. And the rest of the rules are built into the Ringo, the Generalized Distributed Ring Oscillator approach. So if we can come up with a notion of upstream and downstream, then we could try to play this game. So I said, why can't we do something that, instead of being a 2D grid with the root in the upper left and the tail in the lower right, what if we have sort of a amorphous cloud where there's a root in the center and the tail is the entire periphery, a molecule, a cloud, a membrane of sorts, and have that. Do Ringo on that. So that's what this is about. We've got two demos to look at. The first one is I was just building up the infrastructure to do this. The first one doesn't use Ringo. The second one, V11, does. Let's take a look at it here. Which one is it? It's this one. And yes, we have to start it explicitly. Okay. So one, one, two. I'm putting in multiple seeds there. And each one is just this little thing. Okay, and the fourth one triggers an interaction, and we get this. And when I saw this, I said, wow, this looks really cool. Let's put it on the grid and see what happens. This is full of bugs. I don't completely even know what's going on here. I eventually figured out where that big cell membrane, the big orange rim, came from. But essentially what's going on here is those original yellow things, they declared themselves to be a root with their hop count as 0. That means they're the root. And they spawned more gas cloud molecules near them that looked around and said, oh, I see a 0, that means I'm a 1. And then they spawned more and they say, oh, I see a 1, that means I'm a 2, and so forth, until they got up to 14, which is the limit of how many hops we said this experiment you were allowed to go. And if you were the 15th one, then you were supposed to decay, because that's the special trigger. Now here we switch to all right, so let's hold this up for a second. And so that was pretty cool. And the point was that the gas cloud molecules could move around, and when they would wake up, or the neighbors would wake up, they would just search their environment and take whatever the minimum hop count they saw and make themselves hop count 1 more than that. So I tried to say, okay, well, why don't we start with that gas cloud, and now say do Ringo. That if you're the root, if you're hop count 0, you're the root, and if you're hop count 14, if you have no downstream, if you have no things that are further away than you, if you look around and you're the biggest hop count you can see, that means you're the tail, even though that means the entire periphery of the cloud is tail. And I tried to get the thing to sync as well as bop around like that stuff was doing. Couldn't get it to go, so I said, okay, let's try to do something more simple, and that's what this one is. So what we have here is, let's let it go. We put out a root that spawns a cloud the same way, growing out the same distance, but then it starts to cycle. And now you see they're not actually moving, and that's the difference. These now just grow like plants and then stay rooted. But when you're a periphery, when you're one of the tails, you throw a low odd, a rare die, and if it comes up heads, you say, oh, I'm going to spawn another seed, which rattles around, tries to find an empty space, and then creates another root. So what we're seeing here is a whole bunch of roots that are cycling together. And I didn't even know that this was going to work. So they're not completely in sync. And there, look, it locked up because there's some configuration that it got into a deadlock. I don't know, whatever it was. But I had a background watchdog timer that the root says, I want to be a jerk. Remember, the root is the one that keeps making things different, and the tails all say, I'm going to follow you. So the root has an additional timer saying, if I've gone this long and failed to be a jerk, then I erase myself. And so all the hop count 1s look around and they can't see a hop count 0 anymore. So they increase, they basically, when the root disappears in this particular approach, the whole cloud just goes with it. So what happens is now, once again, this thing is cycling, it's coordinated, but it's not slave locked. Look at that. I really love it. It's like you got sort of like different organs or different pieces of a larger thing that have their own local centers, their own local business, but in addition, they coordinate with the things that they touch. We've increased the time-lapse speed now, so you see it going quicker, and this is the way it goes. As long as the tails are cycling, they may toss off new seeds, and so here we have a detached thing where we've got 2 bits that are cycling independently, but eventually they throw a seed in between them, which then gets them coordinated. Maybe that causes them to lock up and so forth. This is a fascinating dynamics. This is multi-scale structure, just almost for free. It's almost just what Ringo wants to do, with the root being the center and the tail, the maximum hop count, whatever we're doing for size, being the tail, and cycling back and forth with that. So I have some additional ideas about how we might be able to all the things that I did so far trying to get this cycling going while also having them move around like was happening in Gas Clouds V1, it didn't cycle. They would just lock up. But I have some additional stuff that I haven't had a chance to implement. And even as it stands, there's actually that part in the lower left corner there that has been stuck for a long time, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. It's still running. It's still stuck, in fact, as far as we know. So I'm hoping, I suspect what's happening is that the route that's locking it up, it managed to get the route into, a triple corner, which requires 3 locks, and it's the slowest to get events, so it just hasn't timed out yet. But I'm not actually sure. Okay, this goes on for a while, but let's say we've gotten the idea here. And so that is the generalized Ringo, and I'm pretty happy about it. I think, breaking out of the idea that there has to be one tail, or even that there has to be one route. But when there is more than one tail or more than one route, then the spatial interactions that fall out of this thing get resolved in a reasonably natural way. So that was my both some research stuff and some fun stuff for this time. Okay. So that's the research story. Outreach. I have 2 little bits to talk about. Like I said, this is a long one. I'm sorry. So one of the goals for this time was to increase the rejection count on my little science fiction story, short story, Search Quiet Wake, SQW. I failed to get an additional rejection because I didn't turn it in yet. But I did actually make some progress. I did engage with the text and started to make a few changes that I had accumulated from talking to people and thought about and so forth. So I'm going to repost that as a no foolin' for next time. But in addition, right after the last T2sday update, I did one of these virtual Santa Fe Institute workshops that there's been several of them over the last year on embodiment and embodied, situated, and grounded intelligence, implications for AI. And I missed the first day, April 12th, because that was the last T2sday, but I attended virtually for the rest of the week. And, it was really great. It was a lot of fun, a ton of smart people and a very diverse group. So there were philosophers, neuroscientists, social scientists, as well as computer scientists and biologists and, you name it. And the fellow in the middle there, John Krakauer, he is a neuroscientist and he had a lot of thoughts about approaches to intelligence and how to understand the brain and the mind and cognition in general and so forth. And he and I kind of got into it a little bit over the last several days because he actually wasn't all that happy with a lot of approaches that people had taken, including lots of computational approaches like that. So that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed interacting with him. At one point in the chat that goes with the Zoom, he made this comment, talking about something that had been previously discussed. That is the classic move. Squeeze interesting cognition until it is crushed by embodiment from one side and culture on the other. This is explaining away from these two sides will not get the job done, in my view, like that. And, when I looked at that, it was like, except for the negative part about it, that seems really right. And so, I made up a slide or two, and when it was, one of the discussion periods, I raised my hand and I made the pitch that, what else could it be? Maybe the way we should understand the job of what interesting cognition is by implementing it, by combining embodiment from one side and culture on the other, where the point is that embodiment writ large in general computer architecture means the implementation. An embodiment is an implementation, which doesn't just mean the registers and the instruction set. I mean, it also means the energy and the heat and the deployment and the cost and the entire physical aspect of the machine. That is the implementation. That is the embodiment. That has tremendous consequences. And on the other hand, we are not just implementing arbitrary machines. We are implementing a programmable machine specifically. And that means that we can be reprogrammed by culture. We can be reprogrammed by code that we receive while the machine is running after it's been built. That's the essence of programmable computing. Embodiment is the implementation of the machine. Culture is the code that we transmit that's running on the machine. It sounds just right. It sounds like a very good way to understand the big picture. Where does something in the mind come from? It comes from either the implementation as a programmable machine, or it comes from the code that's running on the programmable machine. Crush interesting cognition. So that's it. All right. So this has gone pretty long. Well, half hour. Okay, so be it. Next T2sday will be on May 10th. My goal is, I've had this paper intro that I've been supposed to write. I'm way late on it. That now goes to the top. I gotta ship that overdue paper intro before we talk again. And I need to also submit science fiction short story, Search Quiet Wake. Going to submit it to Clark's World. And then the fun, right? What I actually want to work on is, so can we put Gas Cloud V1, V10, and V11 together? Can we get it to do its distributed cycling while also moving around a little bit, jiggling around and going for it? We shall see. But that's the news for T2sday 3119. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope to see you next time. The bigger, more immediate issue is heat. It's time to